إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. We thank the brothers here responsible at Mr. Dar Salam for facilitating this talk and having good thoughts of the brother and inviting us over here, inshallah, so we can benefit ourselves, so we can learn ourselves and revise, and inshallah those who don't know can get to know, inshallah. And tonight I chose this topic of Luqman's advice to his son because of the tremendous lessons that we can extract and take away from the story that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in His noble book. And to be honest, the short time we have won't do it justice. But as they say, مَا لَا يُدْرَكُ كُلُّهُ لَا يُتْرَكُ جُلُّهُ. Whatever you can't benefit in entirety, whatever you can't benefit from in entirety, at least you want to benefit something from it. So I noted down some, in a bullet point fashion, some of the lessons and the ibar and the admonishments that we all can take and learn and ponder over from the lessons of Luqman's advice to his son. And as you know, ya ikhwa, Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't mention the stories of the past nations in the Quran just for the sake of storytelling. Hasha. It's not just arbitrary for no hikmah, no wisdom behind it. Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Hakim. All of His actions, subhanahu wa ta'ala, are based on hikmah, wisdom, rahmah, and justice, and knowledge. طيب? So He Azza wa Jal doesn't just mention these for us to just merely read and not ponder over. Rather, we must ponder over what we recite. From the means of increasing one's iman is when you ponder over the book of Allah Ta'ala, you understand what you're reciting, you understand what's being recited. So He subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. About the messengers and prophets in previous nations. In their stories, there is admonishment, lessons for who? For the people of intellect. For the people of intellect, أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, those who truly ponder and use their intellect to think over and ponder over that which Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in His noble book. Likewise, what He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned is authentic sunnah. So He Azza wa Jal mentioned how Luqman, and by the way, Luqman is not a prophet, he's just a wise, righteous man that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned his story in the Quran because of the great lessons in the hikam that we learn from it, the wisdoms. He began by saying, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, which means we have granted Luqman al-hikmah, wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom, as the people of knowledge say, is putting something in its proper place, in its proper time. For example, saying the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right manner, in the appropriate manner, in the suitable manner. This is all that falls under the umbrella of al-hikmah, wisdom. And likewise, knowledge. A person who has knowledge may not have hikmah, but a person who has hikmah most likely will have knowledge, right? So they go hand in hand, but sometimes there's a distinguishing factor between knowledge and al-hikmah by default, as we said, as the ulama mentioned. So Allah Azza wa Jal, whenever it grabs our attention, He subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us to pay attention to this, because when a person knows that somebody's al-hakim, somebody's wise, then they naturally tend to listen, pay more attention to what he is about to say. We know somebody is wise, he has hikmah, this person is known to be a person of hikmah, of wisdom, of knowledge, then you will by nature naturally listen to him and be more attentive to what he has to say versus someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about and what they're speaking about, right? Naturally. So Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. Be thankful to Allah. So be thankful to Allah Ta'ala that He granted you this hikmah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Luqman, be thankful to Him Azza wa Jal for granting you wisdom, because being granted wisdom is a great blessing and a virtue from Allah Azza wa Jal. وَمَن يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Whoever has been given wisdom has been given an abundance of goodness. Whoever has been given wisdom in knowing how to act and what to say and how to say it and so on and so forth, he indeed has been given a great amount of goodness, amount of khair, as Allah Azza wa Jal said. And ishkur lillah, because when you thank Allah Azza wa Jal, the first lesson we may take from here is that when you thank Allah Azza wa Jal for the blessings you do have, what happens as a result? Who knows? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly mentions in the Quran, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. That Allah Ta'ala proclaimed and promised that if you are thankful, meaning you're thankful for what you have, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted you of ni'am and blessings, He subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase you on top of those blessings. So the ulama say from the means of you increasing in khair and blessings is to thank Allah for what you already have. A lot of people, especially the younger ones, they look at things that they don't have. They always lay their eyes on things that which they don't possess. And then by doing so, they forget about what they possess. They forget about what they already have. ذلك he said صلى الله عليه وسلم انظروا إلى من هو أسفل منكم ولا تنظروا إلى من هو من إيش فوقكم فهو أجدر أن لا تزدروا نعمة الله عليكم كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Look at those beneath you, look at those below you in status and in worldly things, and don't look at those above you. Don't always constantly compare your life to others, because once you do, you're going to forget about all the blessings that you already have, and then you're going to busy yourself with things that you don't have, and possibly Allah knows best if it's been decreed for you to have or not. You take the asbab, you take the means, but the point is, ikhwa, a lot of people, one of the causes and means of depression, especially amongst the younger generation, is that they always look at materialistic things that other people have. Look at all these teenagers in high school or college or so. They're always looking at what other people have of new phones, of a new car, of new this, new that, and then that causes them naturally to forget about everything they already have of blessings and ni'am. Because when you look at other people, they would wish to have what you have. For example, health, as-sihha. You know what do they say? As-sihhatu tajun, as-sihha, health, tajun ala ru'us al-asihha la yarahu illa al-marda. Yani as-sihha, health, good health, well-being is like a crown. It's an invisible crown on the head of the healthy ones that only the sick ones see. So subhanAllah, for them, it's like it's a crown. It's like you're a king compared to them. So think about the health that you have, that you enjoy. You're able to come to the masjid, alhamdulillah. You're able to make sujood, make ruku'. You're able to recite the Quran. You're able to see. So how could you then use all of these blessings that Allah Ta'ala has given you to disobey Him subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is a means of ingratitude. Walillahi al-mathal. I like to give examples to bring the meaning closer. If somebody gave you all of what you wanted and more, and then you take these things that this person gave you and you ended up harming them, this is what? This is a major sign of ingratitude. This is from a hashakum jami'an, but from a despicable person, a very low person, right? وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلْ الْأَعْلَى. If Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who granted you everything you have and more than what you ever asked for, and then you use these limbs and these blessings to disobey Him, this is from the greatest means of ingratitude. That's why we need to always understand that we need to thank Allah Ta'ala for the blessings He has given you, and then He will increase you subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. Be thankful to Allah Azza wa Jal. And then what is the contrary? وَمَنْ كَفَرَ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. Whoever thanks Allah, then in reality, they are doing themselves a favor. How is that? They're doing themselves a favor. Because I ask you guys a question. If the entire of the creation, the entirety of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, from the jinn and from the mankind, everyone, everything, if they were all to be the most righteous and pious people, would that benefit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all? Would that benefit Him subhanahu wa ta'ala? I ask you guys. Of course it won't. Because He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of everything. He possesses everything azza wa jal. Nothing will benefit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. في الحديث القدسي يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم كانوا على أتقى قلب رجل واحد منكم ما زاد ذلك في ملك شيئا وكما جاء عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم يروي عن الله سبحانه وتعالى. Hadith al-Qudsi, meaning the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, narrated, that Allah Azza wa Jal said. طيب, whenever you hear the term Hadith al-Qudsi, يعني الشيء بالشيء يذكر, which means that my servants, if the first of you and the last of you and the human kind of you and the jinn kind from you, all of you had the most pious of hearts, all had the hearts of the most pious person, this will not increase Allah Azza wa Jalla blessings at all. This will not increase Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His kingdom, in His possessions Azza wa Jalla, in His power and His might at all. Because He subhanahu wa ta'ala owns all kingdom and all might. All power belongs to Him Azza wa Jalla. And on the contrary, يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم كانوا على أفجر, the most wicked of people, على أفجر قلب رجل واحد منكم ما نقص ذلك من ملك شيئا. If the first of you and the last of you had the heart of the most wicked, vile, despicable, worst individual, this will not decrease from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's kingdom a bit, anything. So don't think that by you worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal, you're doing Him a favor. Abadan. Rather, you're doing yourself a favor. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, to emphasize to us this fact, is that whoever disbelieves, or whoever here in the context of this ayah, whoever shows ingratitude, يعني مَنْ كَفَرَ بِالنِّعَمِ, whoever displays ingratitude for what Allah Ta'ala has blessed him with, then he is indeed, he must know that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is the all-rich. He's the one worthy of praise. Meaning you won't harm Allah Azza wa Jal a bit whatsoever, and only you're harming yourselves. And then he Subhanahu wa Ta'ala went on to mention and say after that, and like I said, this little time we have won't do this topic justice, honestly, but just to kind of summarize the gist of this great advice that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned to us from Luqman to his son. And then he said, Luqman went on to say to his son, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Let's ponder over this for a minute. Luqman, he began by advising his son with what? With the greatest and most important thing. It's paramount to everything else in your life. That is what? To submit your worship only to Allah and do not associate partners to Allah in any way. لا تشرك بالله. Do not associate and equate anyone and anything with Allah Azza wa Jal. This shows us, that the first thing you should call people to, the first thing you should advise people to is the most important thing. Everything in the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal is important. Everything. Right? Is there anything in the deen of Allah not important? Of course not. Everything in the deen of Allah is important. Everything. Even the siwak, the wiping. A lot of people tend to belittle from these matters. These matters of the deen. Oh, the siwak, you guys talk about the siwak. Like mentioned to you a sunnah of the Prophet. Do you have a problem with the sunnah? You talk about the beard. All of these, they're important things in the deen. Yes, there are things that are more important than others and take priority more, right? But everything in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is important. But the shahid huna, the point of reference, is that Luqman began by advising his son with the most important thing. If one does everything else in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly, but they tamper with at-tawheed, with worshiping Allah ta'ala alone, then what's going to happen? Everything else will be invalid. All of their deeds on the Day of Judgment will be scattered dust. وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. Allah Ta'ala said about the kuffar, about the polytheists, about the mushrikeen. All of the deeds that they did on the Day of Resurrection, it will be like scattered dust. It won't benefit them. Why? Because they violated the greatest right upon them, and that is the right of Allah. Give you guys another example. You know, these days, a lot of people tend to judge others based on their good manners, right? Person may be very good in manners. He may be very sweet with others, displaying all kinds of generosity towards them. But this individual worships cows. This individual says Allah Azza wa Jalla took a son. This individual said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasha, he had to rest, as the Yahud say. Qatalahumullah. Other than that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he got tired, needed to rest. The point is, they say things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are blasphemy, that are clear kufr and shirk, but they're very nice to people. They're very generous. Would that benefit them on the Day of Judgment? It won't benefit them at all. Why? Because they violated the greatest and most important right upon them, and that is to worship Allah Ta'ala alone. That's why the kuffar, ya ikhwa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they'll be in the hellfire forever. Why is that? Because they violated the greatest obligation upon them. The reason of why Allah Ta'ala created them, the purpose of their existence, is to what? To worship Him, Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly, explicitly mentions that hikmah to us in the wisdom. Naam. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Hasr. I have not created the ins, the jinn kind and the ins, the mankind, human, except to worship me, worship Allah Ta'ala alone. Everything else is secondary. Everything else we do in life is for us to sustain our livelihood while we are in this dunya worshiping Allah. So then when we die, bi'idhnillah, we die upon goodness, we die upon iman, we die upon tawheed, and then in the hereafter, you attain your reward that you lived for in this life. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala, the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. Jannah, may Allah Ta'ala make us all from the people of Jannah, ameen. Another thing, ya ikhwan, another doubtful matter that people bring up as well. Why is it that the kafir, the disbeliever, he's in the hellfire forever? The scholars mentioned some reasons. From them is that because Allah Ta'ala knows that this person who lived 70, 80, 90 years, his intention was to live like this forever. Intention was never to become a Muslim and submit to Allah and worship. That's the first thing. Second thing also, if somebody, I'll give you guys another example so you can understand and bring the meaning closer. If a criminal, a murderer, committed a crime, it took him what? 30 seconds, maybe, right? 30 seconds to 20 seconds, 10 seconds less to kill someone. He's spending the rest of his life in prison. Could anyone come in their right mind and say, but it only took him 1 minute or 20 seconds or 10 seconds. He should only spend that time in jail. This doesn't make sense. So when this individual committed shirk and kufr, violated Allah Azza wa Jall's right, then the crime here is so magnificent and so severe that this is what they're gonna get. That's a lot of. The point is, I want to mention some things that may come to some people's mind to kind of clear up these kind of doubts. So then, going back to what Luqman said to his son, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. Do not associate partners to Allah. So here also we learn, as we said, that the first thing you should advise people with is the most important, and that is at-tawheed, to worship Allah Ta'ala. That's why if you have a non-Muslim in your school, a classmate or a colleague, he may be a person who has a girlfriend, haram relationship. He may be a person who smokes, does drugs, drinks alcohol, intoxicants. What should you focus on first? Telling him the purpose of his existence and his life, and the fact that he was created for a sole purpose, and that is to submit to his Creator alone in worship without associating and praying to anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jal alone. Should that be the first thing you tell him? Or first thing you tell him, hey, you need to stop smoking, you need to stop drinking, you need to stop drinking? What should be the first thing you begin with? Advising him. Tawheed, Jazakallah khair. Because, and this is not to belittle from sins at all. Sins are sins. But if a Muslim who's upon La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, he believes that, he worships Allah alone, says Ya Allah alone, he prays to Allah alone, but he falls into sins. He may fall into haram relationship, he may have smoked, whatever, and he should repent from that. But if he dies upon La ilaha illallah, of course Muhammadur Rasulullah after the Prophet Muhammad, everyone must believe in him and submit that he's the messenger of Allah. Lakin if he dies upon at-tawheed, al-shahid, the point is, if he dies upon at-tawheed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he wills, Azza wa Jalla, he'll forgive all of these other sins. What is the evidence for this? What was the ayah for this? Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bih wa yaghfiru ma duna dhalika liman yasha. Allah Ta'ala does not forgive associating partners to him. Kufr and shirk. Allah Ta'ala, if one dies upon that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said himself, Azza wa Jal. People say, oh, don't judge others. Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who said this. We believe what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Do you have any doubt what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said? Of course not. He said, Azza wa Jal, he will not forgive shirk, those who die upon shirk. But of course, if one repents, then the door of repentance is open, as long as they're alive, or before the sun comes out from the west. The point is, ikhwah, the first thing you should, so what I'm trying to say is that a person who dies upon La ilaha illallah, although they may have sins, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, he may forgive them for these sins. Or if he wills, Azza wa Jal, based on his hikmah and justice, he'll punish them for these sins, and then they'll be entered into Jannah. The point is, there will not be a single muwahhid in hellfire forever. Abadan. This is the virtue of La ilaha illallah. This is the virtue of at-tawheed. That's why it's so important to hold on to it. And many people may not think Muslims fall into this, but trust me, ikhwah, many Muslims, illa man rahimallah, fall into at least minor shirk. Some parts, they fall into major shirk. But many common general Muslims that you know probably fall into at least minor shirk. What is minor shirk? Many of them swear by, they take an oath by other than Allah, by the Prophet's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is that permissible? It's not permissible. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, himself said, Man kana halifan falyahlif billah aw liyasmut. Whoever is going to take an oath, then take an oath by Allah only, or be silent. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Man halafa bi shay'in dunillahi faqad kafara aw ashrak. Whoever takes an oath and swears by other than Allah, anyone or anything other than Allah Azza wa Jal, he has committed kufr or shirk. So the point is, a lot of people, you tend to hear them, especially, I remember when I was in high school, a lot of these guys would constantly swear on their mother's life. And a lot of them still do. On his mom's life, on his grandfather's grave, on him. This is shirk, ya. Shirk, by default, is that minor shirk. It doesn't take you out of the fold of Islam, but it still falls under the category of associating partners with Allah, equating others with Allah Azza wa Jal in honor, in reverence, because al-halif, taking an oath, is only by Allah Azza wa Jal. He is Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than everything and anything. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then he said to his son, Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. Al-dhulm, what is al-dhulm? Oppression, injustice. It's putting something in its wrong place, putting something not in the place where it belongs. Right? This is, in general, what al-dhulm is. Injustice is, for example, you taking something from someone else. It doesn't belong to you, it belongs to them. Or something belongs to someone, but you give it to someone else. Or you go and you steal something from someone that doesn't belong to you. You go and steal someone's car, steal someone's house. It doesn't belong to you. This is oppression and dhulm, right? Now, when we know that worship belongs to Allah alone, only, solely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And then if someone takes that act of worship that only belongs to Allah ta'ala alone, and then they direct it to someone else, this is dhulm. This is injustice and oppression. It doesn't harm Allah Azza wa Jal at all. But they have committed the greatest form of dhulm, because they directed something that belongs to Allah alone to other than Him Azza wa Jal. That's why inna shirka la dhulmun azim. Because a dhulm is of different types. The ulama mentioned dhulm is of generally three types. The greatest form of dhulm, oppression, is what's mentioned here. الشرك والكفر. يعني هنا equating to Allah. الشرك. إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. That's the greatest form of oppression. The second type of oppression and injustice is doing injustice against oneself. How do you oppress yourself? By disobeying Allah Azza wa Jalla, by committing sins, by being on paths of misguidance and so on and so forth. You're oppressing yourself here. Right? وَمَنْ يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. Whoever transgresses the boundaries of Allah, then he has oppressed himself. At the end of the day, you're only harming yourself. On the day of judgment, your limbs, these limbs that Allah Azza wa Jal created and gave you in this life to use them for khair and goodness, if you use them for haram, they will testify against you. قالوا أنطقنا الله الذي أنطق كل شيء. Your limbs will say, Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who allowed us to speak, the one who allowed everything Azza wa Jal to speak. So these limbs, if you don't use them in that which is good, then they'll testify against you. And of course, Allah Azza wa Jal is able to do everything and anything. And the day of judgment, things are going to be different than what we see in this life. Now, so the point is, ikhwa, said al-dhulm is first is a shirk, that's the greatest form. Second is when oppressing oneself with sins, wrongdoing, corruption, misguidance, innovating in the religion, being upon ways of misguidance and bid'ah and so on, right? And then the third form of oppression, and this is, most people know about this already, and that's the first type of thing, the type of oppression, form of oppression that comes to people's mind by default, and that is oppressing others, being unjust to others, harming others, taking people's rights. This is also a major sin, no doubt. In fact, a person will come on the day of judgment bankrupt from good deeds. Al-muflis. Who knows the hadith of al-muflis, the bankrupt person? If I were to ask you guys, who do you think the bankrupt person is? Al-muflis. Who's the bankrupt person? The person who's bankrupt. نعم. هذا الشباب بس أنت شاب أيضا بس يعني who knows المفلس؟ مين المفلس؟ Any one of you young brothers? تفضل معاذ.
The one who back bikes and stuff like that, right?
طيب. Why is he a muflis? Why is he bankrupt?
He's gonna lose all his good deeds.
جزاك الله خير. So the المفلس, he said صلى الله عليه وسلم, المفلس يوم القيامة يأتي بصلاة وصيام وزكاة, يعني all of types of good deeds. ويأتي وقد شتم هذا وضرب هذا وسفك دم هذا وأكل مال هذا فيعطى هذا من حسناته وهذا من حسناته. طيب, he came on the day of judgment, this bankrupt, he did a lot of good deeds, Salah, Siyam, Hajj, all types of good deeds, not to limit it and confine it to these three, but the point is that he came with a lot of good deeds. But then he did what? As he was doing these deeds, he oppressed this person, he harmed that person, he slandered that person, he took the money of that person unrightfully so. He did all kinds of oppression to others. So then they will take from his hasanat. Subhanallah. Imagine a person prays Salah, does all kinds of good deeds, fasts in Ramadan, goes to Hajj, spends all this money, and it spends from his effort and time, and then he realizes on the day of judgment, he sees that his deeds are being given to someone else. Why is that? Because on the day of judgment, ikhwa, you will pay back people back, not with money. In this life, if somebody sues you for something, you pay them, you have to pay them from your money. In this life. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's what? Based on deeds, based on your hasanat. That's why it's amazing how some people, they may not like others, right? But they're giving them from their good deeds. Imagine, you don't like someone because of their bad character, because of just, they're a person who's not upright themselves. You don't like them for whatever reason. Obviously, as a Muslim, you can't hate a Muslim from all angles because you love him for the origin of what he has of Iman, but you may despise him for other things. You may hate other traits of him. The point is, you don't like someone for some reason, and you're still giving him or her, that person, from your good deeds. How is that? By you backbiting them, by you slandering them, by you oppressing them. That's why he said subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a golden rule and a principle that we should uphold in our entire lives, to be righteous people truly. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا وَأَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Don't allow your hatred and enmity towards other people cause you to become unjust and oppress them. Don't do that. Be just in all of your affairs. It is closer to piety. Even with the kafir, the disbeliever, you can't oppress them. You can't harm them. Even the animals, you can't harm the animals. Oppressing the animals, treating them wrong. You guys know about the hadith of the women. A woman who would perform righteous deeds and good actions. But she would do what? She harmed. What did she do? She harmed an animal. She oppressed a cat. دخلت امرأة النار في هرة حبستها فلا هي أطعمتها ولا تركتها تأكل من خشاش الأرض كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. A woman entered the fire, and she's going to be from the people of the fire. For the reason for that is because of a cat that she mistreated. She imprisoned this cat. She didn't feed the cat, nor did she allow it to go out and eat from the earth, the grass here and there. She oppressed the cat. So the point is that oppression is a major sin, oppressing others. You have shirk, which is the greatest form of oppression, and then you have, because it has to do with violating Allah Azza wa Jal, the haqq of Allah, the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you have oppressing yourself with sins and so on, and then you have oppressing other people, being unjust towards other people, and we have to be careful from falling into all of these three things. All of these three things. Most importantly, not violating the right of Allah Azza wa Jal. You guys know who Abu Bakr is, radiallahu anhu? The greatest Sahabi, As-Siddiq, Abu Bakr As-Siddiq. As great of a status as he has with us, Ahl al-Islam, al-Sunnah. He, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, taught him a certain dua to make, to protect himself from falling into shirk. Although he was promised Jannah, radiallahu anhu. Who knows this dua? Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. If you brothers can walk away from this dars, memorizing this, then you have walked away with an abundance of khair, inshallah. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from associating partners to you while knowing, and I ask for your forgiveness for that which I do not know. This is very blessed dua to make. And then he went on, subhanahu wa ta'ala then mentions after that the right of the parents in conjunction to his right Azza wa Jal. Right after his right, in another ayah, he subhanahu wa ta'ala, other places in the Quran, he mentioned the rights of the parents in the same ayah. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And your Lord decreed that you don't worship none but Him. And then in the same ayah, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And be excellent with your parents. Be excellent with your parents. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created you, brought you into this life. Your parents are a sabab. They're a means for you to be in this life. So the point is, we have to give people their due rights. The greatest rights. We have the right of Allah Azza wa Jalla, the right of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have the right of the parents. That's why he subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it here as well. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ. And we have advised, we have commanded, made an obligation upon the individual to remember the rights of his parents. Ya ikhwa, to the contrary, those who are ungrateful, or those who disobey, those who violate the rights of their parents, it's a major sin. But in this life, they'll be punished before the akhirah. One of the sins that a person will be subjected to being punished in this life before the akhirah is عقوق الوالدين. كما جاء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. بابان معجلان عقوبتهما في الدنيا البغي والعقوق. Two sins where the punishment is hastened in this dunya before the akhirah. Al-baghi, oppressing others, transgressing against others. Wal-uquq, uquq al-walidain, violating the rights of the parents. Saying uff to them. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا uff. Imagine, you can't even say uff. You can't even express your displeasure against your parents. Let alone raise your voice at them. Let alone raise your hand at them. Let alone hit them. A'udhu billah. So this is something that everyone needs to keep in mind. Not only the young people, but the people who are old, 20s, 30s. People 40s don't even talk to their parents. Imagine a person who's 30, 40, 50, he doesn't talk to his father, his mother. A'udhu billah. To his siblings. Also, this is from the major sins, is to cut the ties of kinship. So the point is, ikhwa, we need to understand this great advice as well. And then he subhanahu wa ta'ala, before moving on after that, he mentions here from the context within the rights of the parents as well. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ, reminding you of what your mother went through, carrying you, with difficulty, from one difficulty to another, the early stages in her stomach, in the womb of the mother, the first trimester, after that, and then while she's holding you in her stomach, and then when she gives birth to you, and then after she gives birth to you, breastfeeds you, wakes up in the middle of the night, all of these things. وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ, difficulty after difficulty, reminding you of the great right that she has over you. Of course, the father as well, but because of what the mother had to endure physically, more so than the father, from the first moment you were in her stomach, subhanAllah. So that's something that we also keep in mind. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, the great Sahabi, when he seen a person in Hajj was carrying his mother, helping his mother, so he went to this great Sahabi and asked, Abdullah ibn Umar was from the scholars of the Sahaba, so people would go to him seeking fatwa and verdicts. So this person went to him and asked him, have I paid my mother back for what I did for in Hajj? He replied back and said, what? وَلَا طَلْقَ. Not even one contraction. You haven't paid her back, not even with one contraction. Contraction is, for those who don't know, the younger guys, what the mother goes through while delivering the baby, right? Contractions. She feels pain in her stomach before she gives birth. She may be 8 hours, 10 hours, sometimes more in labor. Before she, you come out of her stomach. That's the contraction. So you haven't even paid her back one contraction. Subhanallah. This is the right of the parents. This is how the Sahaba radiallahu anhu understood the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal. Then also subsequently the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to uphold, and from them is the rights of the parents. Likewise, the great Sahabi, قصة Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu. This is قصة عجيبة يا أخوة. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu. He was a young man when he accepted Islam. It was said he was 17 years old. This great companion radiallahu anhu, when he accepted Islam, he was 17, and he had everything he wanted. Right? At that age, in Mecca, he loved his mom dearly as well. This is the point of it. He loved his mom dearly. He would obey his mother. He would be dutiful towards her. But then Allah Azza wa Jal blessed him and granted him with the blessing of Islam. He accepted the call, the da'wah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He accepted Islam. He gave up everything. His mother said she's going to stay away from eating, from drinking. She was going to harm herself until her son comes back and retracts and comes back to Islam. Remember how much he loved his mother. He said to her, Wallahi ya ummah, oh wallahi, by Allah, oh mother, لو كانت لك 100 نفس, if you had 100 souls, خرجت نفسا ما تركت دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أو كما جاء رضي الله عنه. If you had 100 souls and each one of them came out one by one, I would not leave the deen of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. I would not come back. Go back to shirk and what he was upon, because he accepted the religion that Muhammad came with, and Iman penetrated his heart. There's no way he was going to leave that off. So imagine, he, despite his mother feeling this way, the right of Allah Azza wa Jal comes first. That's why some ulama tafsir mentioned that this ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Even if your parents were to strive and exhort effort to cause you to commit shirk, kufr, or even sins, but that's because that's the most severe thing, shirk and kufr, right? If they were to exhort their effort to cause you to disobey Allah Azza wa Jalla, don't obey them. Don't obey them in that. But still accompany them in the dunya with goodness. That's why it's not permissible, even if one has non-Muslim parents, they may be mushrikun. It's not permissible for him or her to display enmity and to be rude towards their parents, even if they're mushrikun. You don't obey them in the haram. But even that, your rejection of their munkar, of their evil, of the haram, it should be done in a certain manner with politeness, in a way where you're not vile towards them and rude towards them. This is the right that Allah gave them. It's not based on our emotions. The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is based upon submitting. If it was based on emotions, then everyone would act however they want to act. There'll be chaos. There'll be no boundaries. No. Allah Azza wa Jal has given everyone their due right. This is, subhanAllah, look how they have forsaken the right of Allah, the parents who are mushrikun. They have forsaken the right of Allah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not forsake their right. They left off the right of Allah, and that is to worship Him alone, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah Azza wa Jal did not leave off their right as parents. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the All-Merciful. Now, so this is something to keep in mind. And the general principle, based on the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to the creation when it comes to disobeying the Creator, Allah Azza wa Jal. And then he went on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned once again the remainder of Luqman's advice to his son. Inshallah, we'll summarize. He said, Ya bunayya. And here he's calling him, this is also for the parents as well, that when you advise your children, advise them in a humble, gentle manner. Ya bunayya, my dear son, my son. From some cultures, I know the parents approach their son in a harsh manner. That's the default way in how they approach their children. And this is not correct. Because you want their hearts to gravitate towards what you have to say. You want their hearts to become lenient to what you're about to say to them of advice. You want them to feel that you genuinely want good for them. You really care for them. You don't just want to display your authority as a father. Yes, you have that right. They should listen to you. But what maqsood isn't the objective for them to follow that which you're advising them of goodness. That's the objective. So you should approach them in a way where that objective is more likely than if you were to approach them in a rough manner. Ya bunay, my dear son, barakallahu feek, may Allah bless you. This is wrong. This is the right thing to do. My son, you know I want good for you. Listen to me. I was your age at one point in time. I know how these things are. Trust me, I have experience. If you speak to them in that kind of way, then inshallah, there's a much higher chance of the fact that they're going to accept what you say. They're going to feel like you're a friend also with them. You're a companion, not just a father. Hey, my son, do this, don't do that. But you're also a companion. They may open up to you, say certain things to you, ask you about certain things that, once upon a time, I know a lot of us growing up, we had this kind of cultural distance between us and our parents. May Allah Ta'ala reward them for the upbringing that they did for us and have mercy on the ones who have passed away. Ameen ya Rabb. But the point is, we live in a different time and age. We live in a time and age where, it's not about just them being exposed to things in school. This device, this phone right here, if we don't pay attention, if we don't use it, if you don't cultivate them upon iman and taqwa and teach them how to use it, if they're going to inevitably have one, let's say, then it's a double-edged sword. It may backfire and harm them severely. So the point is, we live in a different time and day and age. So it doesn't mean that the rules of Allah change. No, rather, but to approach your children you have to be political. Salah, you have to be political in how you approach your children. You may become angry. Some parents become angry at their children and they just want revenge and they may kick them out of the house. And then these children, if they're kicked out of the house, at the teenage years especially, guess what? They're going to find other people that are going to take them in and welcome them in with open arms. Not good people, rather evil people that don't want the goodness for them, based, of course, iman-wise and for their Islam, the way that you would want for them. Just something to keep in mind. Ya bunayya, إنها إن تق مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأتي بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير. And here, he's advising his son to cultivate aqeedah and iman in his heart, for him to know, his son to realize and know firmly that nothing, not even the smallest thing in our sight escapes the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal, in the seeing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything you do, whether it's in front of people, behind closed doors, if you have strong iman and taqwa and you're conscious of Allah Azza wa Jal, you know that He's all watching over you and He subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the angels to write everything you do, you wouldn't care if people see you or not. Khalas, you stay away from this haram thing because you know Allah is all watching over you. Even if it's a mustard seed on a rock in the middle of the desert, in the heavens or in the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring it forth. Meaning nothing escapes His knowledge, nothing escapes His seeing subhanahu wa ta'ala. So point is to cultivate your children, and for us, all of us to know, young, old, everyone, to know that nothing escapes Allah Azza wa Jalla's knowledge. The people who don't have taqwa, they don't care. They'll do whatever they want. As he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if you have no shame, do whatever you want. Meaning nothing will deter you. Nothing's going to stop these people. It doesn't mean go ahead, do whatever you want as just merely a choice. Either you could choose whatever you want, no repercussion. No, rather, the scholars say here, min bab at-tahdid. threatening. Like, okay, go do what you want, and you'll see the results of that. Or he sallallahu alaihi wasallam is informing us of a matter of a matter of fact. من باب الخبر. يعني those who don't have any shame, they're gonna do whatever they want. They don't have shame that's gonna deter them and stop them from doing whatever they want. A lot of you, I'm sure, have some apps right on social media that sometimes you may have, or maybe in the past, or at least based on common knowledge these days, that many people act like fools on social media, right? They do a lot of just this nasty thing. They do a lot of things that they think is cool, but it's foolishness. You're like, how could a person who has self-respect do these kind of things to gain clout, just to gain views and to gain likes? Remember, if you have no shame, do whatever you want. Nothing's going to stop you. So the point is, what will stop you as a Muslim, as a mu'min, as a believer, if you're, by the fitrah, even that some kuffar whose fitrah still not tampered all the way, they still won't do some of these shameless acts. But what should deter you awwal and first is you knowing that Allah Ta'ala is all watching over you. You should be more, you should be more shameful before Allah Azza wa Jalla, before the people. يستخفون من الناس ولا يستخفون من الله. That they hide from the people, they don't want to expose themselves for others, but they don't mind if Allah Ta'ala sees them. Nah, so the point is, ikhwa, this is something that we should always keep in our mind, always be mindful of Allah Ta'ala. اتقوا الله حق تقاته. Have taqwa of Allah, be conscious of Allah as He deserves, Azza wa Jal. And you could never attain that as He rightfully so deserves, subhanahu wa ta'ala, but as much as you possibly could strive. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. We all fall into sin, none of us are perfect, but constantly be mindful of Allah Ta'ala and repent. Always repent. Remind yourself that you always have a chance. Don't ever despair. I used to hear people, a'yadhan billah, because they used to commit they used to fall into a lot of haram things and sins. They would say, kufr statements, I don't want to repeat it myself. They would say, oh, they're saying that they're already going to be in the fire, so let them they're already so bad they're going to the fire anyways, man. So let's as they say, let me enjoy life, as they say. This is what shaitan wants, khalas. Shaitan beat them right there. He makes them feel like they're going to the hellfire anyways. Is this the way a Muslim ever thinks? Does a Muslim ever despair from Allah's mercy, no matter how evil and wicked they once were? Never. The Muslim always knows that there's a great opportunity for you to repent. And the doors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and rahmah and forgiveness are open up until you die, up until your soul leaves your body, or if the sun comes out from the west. The person never. That's why, ikhwa, we shouldn't also at the same time, we shouldn't look down upon the sinners, by the way. You should, of course, hate the sin and stay away from sin, and you should feel bad for the other Muslim who falls into sin, and you want to help them. It's like a sick person. You want to help them and try to find a cure for them, bi'idhnillah. So don't look down upon others. The Sahabi, the great companion, who, one of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu. The companions, they're all, by virtue of being companions, they're the greatest people from this ummah, but they vary in their rankings and their status. But so one companion, he would drink alcohol in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This shows us that some sins sins would take place and occur. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't endorse it, wouldn't allow for it to happen, but sins would happen between the people, the humans at the end, between the Muslims. But so he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this person was brought forth to him, and one companion, out of his zealousness and because of the fact that he hates to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being disobeyed and people sinning like that, he cursed this companion who was drinking alcohol. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He sallallahu alaihi wasallam reprimanded the Sahaba from doing so. He said, "La tal'anu, فوالله ما علمت أنه يحب الله ورسوله." Wallahi, I know that he loves Allah and His Messenger. Subhanallah. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, "Al-khamr," into alcohol, was in his heart, it was in his stomach, while the love of Allah and His Messenger was in his heart. This shows us that what? That a Muslim sinner, that a Muslim may be a sinner, but he still has the love of Allah Azza wa Jalla, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his heart. But he may fall, weak to shaitan's desires and the plots, right? So the point is, don't look down on other Muslims who fall into sins. You should always strive and make dua that Allah guides them. And if you yourself can give them da'wah, do so. If you can accompany them so they can feel like you really want genuinely good for them, then this is also khair, inshallah, as long as they're not affecting you. If they're brushing off on you in a negative sense, if they have a stronger personality than you, if they're gonna make you, just by accompanying them, you're gonna see yourself falling into haram, then no. Here at the end of the day, you have to save yourself. Everyone knows the reality of their situation. متى الأذان شيخ؟ 8 more minutes. 50. 10 more minutes, inshallah. And then he went on to mention and say, and then Luqman advised his son, another very important great thing here. يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانهى عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور. Oh my son, establish the prayer, establish the salah. A lot of parents, they focus so much so on their children's schooling and their good grades. It's good, no doubt. You shouldn't just be negligent of your children's, not care about your children's school and grades and so on, no doubt. But what's greater than that is their salah, is their deed. What's greater than that is them being good, growing up to be good Muslims, understanding and knowing the right of Allah Ta'ala in this life. Because what would benefit them if they were to become very successful in this life and then they die and not performing salah, not caring about the salah? This will harm them actually, and you'll harm yourself too as a parent for not doing your due diligence and not performing the obligation that Allah has obligated upon you. He said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Muru awladakum bis-salati li-7. Command your children to pray at the age of 7. Meaning, your child turned 7, Ya bunay, my son, yalla, go perform wudu and pray salah. Perform wudu and pray salah. And you yourself should lead by example, right? Be a role model to them. Because if they see you pray, then most of the time they will join you. You don't even have to exert effort, really. Right? So the point is, Ya bunayya aqim as-salah. Establish the salah. Establishing the salah properly. Iqamat as-salah is not merely by going through the motions. Just do the salah, right? No. Iqamat as-salah is establishing the salah with its pillars, with its wajibat, praying it properly as He subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated. And sadly, it's sad to say again this, but we see many people not establishing this properly. They don't establish the salah properly. Older people too. They are not establishing the salah properly. Meaning, for example, they don't do ruku' properly. They don't have a tama'nina in ruku' while standing up. They go back down like they're like a bullet straight back down. They don't even stand up straight. In sujood, they don't perform sujood correctly. Ajib. And they're older, 40, 50, 60. And you wonder, they've been praying for 20, 30, 40 years and they haven't. I believe it's the Sahabi, was it Hudayfa? Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, when he seen a person pray, he asked him, how many years have you been praying salah? He said 40 years. He said, for 40 years you haven't performed salah. SubhanAllah, why? Because he wasn't praying properly. He wasn't performing salah properly. Even before that, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he seen a companion who genuinely wanted khair, he wanted to perform salah radiallahu anhu, but he did not know how to perform salah except that way. The scholars refer to him as the hadith al-musid salati, or the one who didn't know how to pray properly. He said to him, irja' fasalli fa innaka lam tusalli. Go back and pray, you haven't prayed. 1, 2, 3 times. Why? Because it's not that he wasn't actually doing the motions of the salah, but because he wasn't doing them properly. And then he sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught him how to pray. So the point is, iqamat as-salah is establishing the salah properly. Not just standing in salah, not knowing what you're reciting, not performing sujood properly, not performing ruku' properly. No, you have to perform it properly, the complete way. That Allah Azza wa Jalla wills from you. And then he went on to advise him and say, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Oh my son, after commanding him with the salah, he said to him, enjoin the good and forbid the evil. And then be patient upon that which will afflict you. Why did he mention وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ? The ulama say because it is inevitable that anyone who's going to enjoin the good and forbid the evil, he's going to have to be patient upon the harms of others. Because not everyone's going to be receptive to what you have to say. Not everyone is going to listen to you wholeheartedly. Not everyone's going to say, Jazakallah khair, thank you. And actually, a lot of people are going to become argumentative with you. They're just not going to want to listen. That's why you have to be patient. Don't let that deter you and stop you from actually enjoining good and forbidding evil. Because that's what shaitan wants. He wants you to stop enjoining good, stop forbidding evil, because people are just not going to listen. Then he causes you to despair. This way, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is lost. If there's no enjoining good, forbidding evil, the proper way, within the Islamic boundaries, of course, then the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be lost. No, يذهب تذهب هيبة الدين, as they say. The superiority and the might and of this religion, then it will vanish, it will be lost. That's why enjoining the good and forbidding evil is from the foundation of this religion, but you have to do it properly. As Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, إذا كنت آمرا بالمعروف فأمر بمعروف وإذا كنت ناهيا عن المنكر فلا تنهى بمنكر. If you're going to enjoin good, then enjoin good in the proper way, in the proper manner. And if you're going to forbid evil, then don't do it in an evil manner. Yani don't, by you forbidding evil, don't do it in an evil manner, and or don't allow this, you forbidding this evil manner to lead to something even greater than that. That's why he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he, and this is, the ulama mention this often, this become a qaida, a principle, that when this Bedouin man came in and he urinated in the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is an evil, right? Urinating in the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On top of that, if we were to see someone doing that today in masjid, what would we do? People are going to jump on him and tap him. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's what the Sahaba do. The Sahaba, they didn't like to see that happen. They wanted to stop him. He alayhi salatu wassalam, using hikmah, wisdom, he said, leave him, da'u. That was the remove. Leave him. Let him finish. And then he sallallahu he commanded a bucket of water to be brought and poured over it. Because if they were to stop him, try to stop him, what would happen? Instead of him urinating and contaminating one small part, he's going to contaminate larger areas of the masjid. Right? Or he may contaminate themselves who are trying to stop him. The urine may splash and come all over them. It would be a greater evil. It would be an evil on a larger scale. So that sometimes, ikhwa, you have to, all the time, but sometimes you may have to approach a certain evil, munkar, with certain wisdom, so it doesn't lead to something greater. And the examples of that are many. But the point is, by default, if you're able to, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us the ranks here. Who knows the ranks, the different levels of nahy al munkar? Who knows the different levels of forbidding evil? Shabab, تفضل. من رأى منكم منكرا, 3 levels.
With your hand, with your actions, and then with your tongue.
With your hand.
With your tongue.
But if you can't with your hand, you're not a person of authority. You don't have power. With your tongue,
with your
speak against it. And if you can't, or it's going to lead to a greater evil, and you know that, then do what?
You hate it with your.
You hate it. You have to hate it with your heart. Every Muslim must hate the munkar, the evil, with their heart, and that's the lowest of iman, the weakest of iman. You can't change it, but you hate it with your heart. You despise it with your heart because it's a sin, it's a munkar. So, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. And subhanAllah, we don't have enough time to go over the remainder of the great advice, of the remainder of the advice from Luqman to his son. But just to summarize in a summarized fashion here, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Be patient upon what will afflict you. Because the ikhwa know that anyone who enjoins the good and forbids the evil, and he's upon the path of the messengers. All the prophets and messengers, they endured harm from their own people. Look at our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before he became a prophet and messenger, everyone in Mecca loved him, and everyone in Mecca knew that he was the honest, trustworthy one. Who knows what they would call him, what his label would be before he became a prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What would they call him? What would they refer to him as? Sadiq al-Amin sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The truthful, the trustworthy one, the truthful, the trustworthy one. As soon as he began to tell them, to call them to worship Allah only alone, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and forbade them from worshiping these idols, they did what? They turned around and started calling him, the worst of names. Majnoon, Sahir, Kadhab, Hasha, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Because of the arrogance they had. And how much they despised the message and the da'wah that he came with. So the point is, anyone who's going to enjoy good and forbid evil, then know that you're going to have to face some hardships from the people. It's not going to be easy. It may be from your own family, but you have to be patient and you have to deal with them in a way that has hikmah, wisdom, especially your kins, your close brothers, especially your parents. And I know some brothers who just started practicing, right? They're mashallah, they're very excited. They feel the sweetness of iman and the beauty, and which is beautiful. But they shouldn't allow that to cause them to act in a certain manner against their parents that will cause them to fall in a major sin, right? So, for example, you wanna have a beard. You wanna let your beard grow because you know this is an obligation. But your parents are saying to shave your beard, cut from your beard. Should you obey them in that? You shouldn't obey them because you'll disobey Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which take precedence over everyone else and anyone else in obedience, right? Because obeying the Messenger is obeying Allah Azza wa Jalla. مَن يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهَ. The ayah is very clear. Whoever obeys the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has obeyed Allah, because he alayhi wasallam doesn't speak from his own desires. Everything we follow, we do based on the commands of the Prophet alayhi wasallam is from Allah Azza wa Jalla. The Quran is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sunnah, the authentic Sunnah, is inspired by Allah on the tongue of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or based on his actions, or what he approved of, right? But it's all from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Now, so You have to be patient upon the harm that you may endure from others. Don't let that deter you. Don't let that stop you from being upon the right path. And know that before you, the greatest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, the prophets and messengers, they had to deal with this themselves, but they had strong determination. So for you to be upon their path as well, you should have strong determination, because the end result is the paradise that you will forever eternally enjoy bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And we can go on and on about this, like I said, but due to time and because time of Isha came in, we will inshallah stop here. So Shaykh can call that then. Wallahu ta'ala alam wa sallallahu sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Tawfiq Allah. وإياكم جميعا. خلاص 10 دقائق بعد الأذان. طيب خلاص.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.